Today, we're diving into a landmark Supreme Court judgment that is going to fundamentally restructure tiger conservation in India. For anyone involved in wildlife management or policy, these changes aren't just important, they are now mandatory.
And make no mistake, this ruling from the Supreme Court marks a truly pivotal moment. We're talking about a complete paradigm shift in how we approach the governance of India's most critical ecosystems. It's a game changer.
All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the ruling itself and look at the one specific case that really sparked all of this. Then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of the new rules for tiger safaris and protecting those crucial buffer zones. We'll wrap up with the massive pan-India reforms and, most importantly, the clear mandate for action.
Okay, first things first. It's absolutely crucial to understand that this ruling isn't just about a single case. What it does is establish a new, much stricter and legally enforceable framework for managing all tiger reserves across the entire country.
So here's the heart of the matter. The court has legally reclassified tiger reserves, basically putting them on a higher pedestal than even national parks or sanctuaries. And that one change demands a superior, completely non-negotiable level of protection.
So, you might be wondering, how did we even get here? Well, this whole national reform was actually triggered by some really severe ecological damage in one of India's most famous reserves, the CORBETT Tiger Reserve. Let's walk through what happened.
It all kicked off with some pretty shocking violations at a place called Pakrao in CORBETT. We're talking illegal construction and the felling of thousands of trees, all for a safari. When the Supreme Court stepped in, they saw that this wasn't just a local problem, it pointed to a systemic national failure. And that realization led directly to creating an expert committee to recommend sweeping pan-India reforms.
And that brings us to one of the biggest changes from this ruling, a complete redefinition of what a tiger safari even is. Their legal purpose is now officially shifted away from tourism and entertainment to being a very tightly controlled conservation tool.
So the court has laid down a brand new, very strict legal definition. A tiger safari is now officially an ex situ conservation tool. That means it's for animals outside their natural habitat. It can only be set up on non-forest land and, here's the key, it must be linked to a rescue center for local animals. This completely changes its reason for being.
And when it comes to location, the new rules are crystal clear and non-negotiable. Safaris are now absolutely prohibited in any core or critical tiger habitat, period. They're only allowed on non-forest or degraded land inside the buffer zone, and even then, it's a no-go if that land is part of a known tiger corridor. Protecting those dispersal routes is paramount.
Now let's look at the day-to-day operations, because the mandates here are incredibly specific. Animals can only be sourced locally from rescue or conflict situations. Management falls directly under the field director, which means clear accountability. All the money earned has to go right back into conservation. Enclosures have to meet Central Zoo Authority standards, and there's a blanket ban on all-night tourism.
This intense focus on habitat integrity naturally leads us to the next huge reform, creating a legally enforceable and, for the first time, a uniform standard of protection for the buffer zones that surround our critical tiger habitats.
And the court is not messing around. It has slapped a strict one-year deadline on all state governments to notify eco-sensitive zones, or ESZs, around every single tiger reserve in the country. This creates a very clear, time-bound mandate that has to be met.
And there's absolutely no room for interpretation here. These new ESZs have to, at a bare minimum, cover the entire buffer and fringe areas of the reserve. This gets rid of any previous ambiguity and establishes a consistent, legally binding layer of protection everywhere.
And this table right here makes it crystal clear for implementation. On the left, you've got activities that are now completely banned in these zones, things like commercial mining and polluting industries. On the right, you see activities that can still happen, but only under very strict regulation and according to approved plans.
The court also got very specific on tourism. For starters, building new resorts in tiger corridors is now prohibited. All tourism facilities, new and old, have to implement zero-waste practices. And get this, within just 3 months, the entire tiger reserve area has to be officially notified as a silence zone, which gives authorities real power to crack down on noise.
Okay, the last set of directives really addresses the systemic weaknesses head-on. This is a full-scale overhaul of governance, staffing, and funding for every single tiger reserve in India. And the timelines here are tight. We're talking about fixing the administrative foundation and fast. Within just 2 months, every reserve needs to have a steering committee. By the 3-month mark, all tiger conservation plans have to be updated,
And within 6 months, all core and buffer areas must be formally legally notified.
You know, at the end of the day, conservation is all about the people on the ground. And the court recognized this with some massive HR reforms. Core jobs like patrolling can't be outsourced anymore. All those vacancies in the forest cadres, they have to be filled and on a deadline. We're also going to see new specialized cadres of scientists and sociologists. And maybe most importantly, the welfare for frontline staff is getting a major boost, bringing them on par with paramilitary forces.
Of course, none of this works without the money to back it up. So to make sure these reforms actually stick, the court has given the Environment Ministry, the NTCA, and the CEC just 6 months to come up with a whole new policy framework on funding. This is meant to finally fix those long-standing gaps and guarantee timely, adequate financial support. So what does all this boil down to for the officials who have to make it happen? Well, the court has handed us a clear, actionable framework for implementation, complete with deadlines and responsibilities. Think of this table as your new playbook. It is the go-to reference for making sure everyone stays on track. It translates the court's vision into concrete, measurable actions with very clear ownership and deadlines. From notifying ESNZs within a year to framing new guidelines for human-wildlife conflict within 6 months, the path forward is laid out for us.
So, when you boil it all down, the big picture takeaway here is profound. This judgment forces a fundamental shift in our national wildlife policy. We're moving away from a human-centered or anthropocentric model to a strictly ecocentric one where the health of the entire ecosystem is always the #1 priority.
So, the question is, with this new, robust, and enforceable framework, has India finally secured the future for its tigers? Well, the policy is here. It's the strongest we've ever had. The real test now isn't about the words on the page, it's about enforcement. The future of the tiger now depends entirely on turning this powerful judgment into lasting action on the ground.